Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Teas. Get some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Teas at dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you enjoy the Girl Dad Discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe the relationship between a daughter and her father is one of the most important relationships a young lady can have. And therefore, my mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by sharing the voices of girl dads to the world. So check out our podcast on every platform where podcasts can be listened to. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel. Again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with your host, Ernest James. Hey guys, this is Ernest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the 3 tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $EJames, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you listen, like, subscribe, and share our podcast with someone else. Don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone else. Definitely want you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and our podcast on all of your podcast listening platforms. And while you're at it, check out our partner podcast, which is the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with myself, and with there also where we share a YouTube channel. So when you go to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast on YouTube, you will also find the Girl Dad Discussions podcast there. And on that podcast, we talk to girl dads like myself, other girl dads and daughters about the relationship, the daddy-daughter relationship, and giving a lot of insight and information on that, just sharing it to be able to battle against the deadbeat dad syndrome, should I say, or that notion. So again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Make sure you guys are checking that out. And also, I'm going to tell you guys how you can win $100 from the podcast, but you got to stay until the end of the podcast to get that information. So today, just like any other day, we are blessed with the guest, Miss Natasha. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I am good. First of all, let me say thank you for being on, because you could have been doing anything. And being somewhere else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'm excited to be here.
Good, good, good. So do me a favor. Let's jump right in. Do me a favor. Introduce yourself to my listeners and tell them who you are and what it is that you do.
Absolutely. So, greetings and humble salutations. I am Natasha Jugger. I am the young leader's leader. But whether you're 52 or you're 22, you are however many years young you are. And if you'll allow me to lead you, then I will be your young leader's leader. And I teach young leaders how to live a successfully holistic lifestyle. I focus on the whole man, your mind, your body, your soul, and your spirit. But we want you to be successful without compromising your morals, values, and integrity. And I do that through speaking, writing, and coaching.
All right, all right. Okay, speaking, writing, and coaching. So,
Mhm,
Natasha, do me a favor. Let's go back to before Natasha was the young leaders leader. Who
mhm.
was Natasha coming up, and what was that transitional moment that switched for you? For you went to go from Natasha, who you was, to Natasha, the version of yourself that we see now.
Absolutely. So, great question. Growing up, I was a young girl. I grew up to a wonderful Jamaican household, as we say, Wagwan. I grew up in a single parent household as an only child. So, growing up, I was used to being by myself. I was used to enjoying my own company. And then finally, when I got to college, a whole entire new world opened up to me, one that wasn't sheltered, one that wasn't protected, one where I could do what I wanted, go where I wanted, say what I wanted, move how I wanted. And that opened up a whole new world for me because growing up, and even as you talked about, you have the Girl Dad podcast. Growing up, I didn't feel like I had that luxury. I didn't have my father at my disposal. I didn't have a relationship with him. And so, not to blame him, but some of my decisions that I made to fill a void that only God could fill, I began to fill it with substances. I began to fill it with alcoholism. I began to fill it with illicit relationships. I tried to fill a void looking for love in all the wrong places that only truly God could fill. And so that pivotal moment for me was when I finally got to college and I almost ended up in jail, homeless, kicked out of my dorm, and kicked out of school because of a decision I made to once again fill myself with an illicit relationship. And I was crossfaded, as my generation would say. And it was one faithful night where I became sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I said, Lord, if you get me out of this, I'll never do this again. But this time I said what I meant and I meant what I said. And that was the pivotal moment for me that transitioned me from the caterpillar to the butterfly that I now am today.
All right, all right. So, quick question: are you a PK?
I am, yes.
See,
You
I
can
felt it.
tell.
I felt the connection, right?
Yeah.
I, I am also, and for the listeners who don't know what a PK is, that's a pastor's kid or a preacher's kid, right? And I'm both. So
You already know.
I felt the connection, right? And then when you emphasized on when you went to college and the whole new world opened up, I'm like, yeah,
That
I
part.
felt it. I felt it.
Yes.
But I think that although to an extent, we grow up and we are all sheltered, especially as PKs, uh, even though we have a stigma of getting in trouble, and I think is it's partly because we're part of the most looked at, but I think as all young people that's uh in a protective family who have parents who kind of lay structure down when you do go off to college, and even not even just college, when you get out of high school and you really in a position to make your own decisions, and that freedom that comes with that can sometimes be a burden as well as a blessing, if you're not ready for it. And so that's one of the things that I tell young people when I'm talking to them is you got to have a plan, because if you don't have a plan for your life, then you're open up to somebody else's plan, and then that's how you end up following the crowd and going to doing things that you probably would have never done on your own. but because you have no direction of yourself, then you kind of follow, um, whoever or whatever, that comes your way. As we used to say in the church, I'm a little older than you, I'm sure, but they used to say every way, whichever way the wind blows. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the way that you go. So I want to talk a little bit more about the leader, being a leader yourself, and even getting into the speaking. Did you have a mentor, should I say, that kind of led you as a leader to make you even get into the to that space? And then what even was the thing that made you be like, okay, I'm going to do this for the people after me, the younger generation that's after me?
Absolutely. So, yes, that question is twofold. So, first, I did have a mentor and a leader, and not leading me down this path necessarily, but they led me out of the bondage and the isolation and the rejection that I was facing and that I was in. And so, in college, I found a young lady who was a little bit older than myself. And she said, "You know what, Natasha, I see where you are. I've been where you are, and I want to help you up." It's the whole concept of each one reach one. And so she began to mentor me. We began to meet Wednesdays weekly. She began to develop a plan for me. She said, "This is how you're going to get out of the mess that you're in. We're going to have you fasting. We're going to have you praying. We're going to be meeting on a weekly basis. We're going to get in our word. We're going to begin to fast and pray and see these bondages broken and these yokes destroyed over your life." And so I had someone that led me out of the bondage of sin that I was in. So she was for me what I wish I had when I was in it, but God brought me someone at the tail end of it so that I would not jump back in, as they say.
Mhm.
So that was the first step, and that was the first answer. The second is twofold. I am the young leader's leader because I want to be for others what I never felt like I had. And even that situation I described to you, where the young lady was helping me, she was helping me in becoming the righteousness of God. But I wish someone would have just given me practical tools on how to be who I am today. And so, what really inspired me is I saw a generation of young people that were making the wrong decisions, that were, as the Bible says in Mark chapter 8, verse 36, "What does it profit a man to gain the world and lose his soul?" And I saw a generation of young people that were literally losing their soul. And our soul is made up of our mind, which is our intellect, our will, and our emotions. And I literally saw young people losing their mind, losing their life, losing their soul behind decisions they made. And I know what it's like to sell my soul. And so, because of that, I wanted to make sure that that did never happen again. And if it did, I wanted to show you that there was a way out. So that's really what inspired me and was pivotal for me in my life.
Yeah, and so that kind of put you on the way that you're going, or should I say, in the direction that you're going. So I want to talk a little bit about your I want to call it a program, but I don't I don't know what you want to call it, organization, movement, and it's the 3G connection. So tell us a little bit about that and break it down where, how you break it. I mean, you can break it down how you feel, but kind of break it down to where we have a clear understanding of that, even the young people that are listening now, that they know exactly who you are and what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So perfect. You're right on time. I figured I'd just bring it up. So I wrote a book, and I know the light is terrible right now, but I wrote a book. It's called 3G Connection, and it's Go to God, it's Grow with Grace, and it's Glow in Glory. And so I'm going to slow down because I get very excited when I talk about my program and my nonprofit. What happened was, and just going back a little bit to the testimony so I can get you to the 3G connection,
Mhm.
is the night where everything happened. I did kick the individual out my car, and I made a decision that I was not going to be the ride or die chick, but I was going to ride and live. And so as I rode off into the sunset, I got a revelation from God. And he says, the way that you're going to get out of this is you're going to need to do the 3Gs. You're going to need to go, you're going to need to grow, and you're going to need to glow. So my nonprofit 3G Connection, which I'm going to break down for the audience, was birthed from a place of revelation. It was a birth from a place of trial and error and tribulation, but it was a birth from a place of pain. And so even as you talk about healing from the pain, that was something that I had to do, and that's how I can help others with my nonprofit. And so the first step that he gave me, and what I want to give you all, is he told me that you have to say no mo to FOMO. You have to tell YOLO to let go so that you can go, grow, and glow. And the reason why I was making decisions, and a lot of young people make these decisions, is because we suffer from FOMO, which is the fear of missing out. And we also live so recklessly because we believe that we only live once. And while that may be true, as we know in church, you don't only live once. You live this life so that you can live again. But
Mhm.
how you live this life here on earth determines where you'll spend your eternity. And so, one of the things that God gave me was He says, you need to teach them how to no longer suffer from FOMO and say no mo to FOMO. It's a mnemonic and it helps you remember it better. And He says also, not only do we need to stop suffering from the fear of missing out, because when we have Him, when we get God, we have everything. Therefore, we miss out on nothing. And then he said the other thing that we need to do is we need to tell YOLO to let go. Just like somebody is grabbing you and you don't want them to grab you anymore, and you tell them let go, just like Moses told Pharaoh, let my people go. You need to tell YOLO to let you go. Stop living behind that moniker. Stop living in that, and stop living so recklessly because you only live once. The truth of the matter is how you live now will determine how you live and where you live in the afterlife. And while I don't believe in reincarnation, I do believe that you will spend your eternity somewhere. And so it would behoove of you. And as Paul says in the Bible, I beseech thee by the mercies of God to please be careful how you live. Walk worthy of the calling in which you have received so that you can live again, and prayerfully not in suffering. And so as you say no more to FOMO, as you tell YOLO to let go, then you will go, grow, and glow. And that's where the 3G connection comes in. And so that goal, the number one thing that I had to do with my testimony and that I encourage young people to do, the first step is to go. You need to go away from people, places, and things that do not mean you well. You need to run to people, places, and things that mean you well. So whether it's your faith, whether it's a higher power, whether it's a teacher in school, whether it's a college professor on campus, whether it's a pastor, whether it's a minister, a sister, or a brother, someone that you know is going in the right direction, you need to run to them, and you need to run out of some things. Before you can walk into some things, you need to walk out on some things, and it's okay to walk out. The next thing that I need my listeners and readers and leaders to do is after you go, you need to grow. And the way that you grow is through the power of self-affirmation. That means, like, if you've ever seen a show, it starred Gabrielle Union and it was called Being Mary Jane. She would have these yellow sticky pads and she would begin to write who she was and who she was on these yellow sticky pads. And I need you to post those on your mirrors everywhere you go. And I need you to begin to write, for my ladies, you are beautiful. To my men, you are handsome. To God, we are the apple of God's eye. We begin to write positive affirmations. Everything negative that you heard about yourself, I need you to write the opposite of that. I believe it's the evangelist Jacqueline Carr. Whenever the enemy tells you that you are something, you tell him that you are not that. Whenever the enemy tells you that you are not something, you tell him, no, 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 I am that. Whatever they said, you need to say the opposite and write it down. So after you go, then you grow. And then the last thing that you do is you glow. And you glow up by, when you go, it's because you speak to others. When you grow, it's because you've spoken to yourself. But when you glow, it's because you've allowed others to speak into you. And so now that means to surround yourself with a local community and the surrounding neighborhood that's going to embrace you and speak life into you and remind you that your playing small does not serve this world. And there's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others will feel insecure around you. You were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within you. And as you let your light shine, you unconsciously give others permission to do the same. And that's a part of the go, the grow, and the glow up plan. And that quote that I just said is by the Dr. Marianne Williamson. And some would credit it to the late, great Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. But I don't believe in plagiarism, and I do believe in attributing my sources. And that's part of the go, grow, and glow up plan of 3G Connection LLC, and henceforth the book that God gave me to write.
All right, all right. You said a mouthful. I,
I told you I could get going.
I was gonna mess with you. I was gonna say, y'all know you're a preacher's kid.
Yeah, true and true.
But you know what? I like what you said. One of the things that you mentioned about was that your program grew out of your pain. And one of the things that I talk about, because as we both are, for the audience who doesn't know, we both are speakers. We both are actually a part of the Next Level Speakers Academy. And one of the things that I speak on when I'm speaking to young people, or just people in general, when I speak about finding your purpose. And when I was going through my transition phase of going through self-development and things like that, and to find my purpose, one of the things that God gave me was a quote. And the quote says that pain births purpose, purpose births progress, and progress is the evidence that God is at work. And so when I explain it, even from my own experience, even how the podcast actually came to be, was from pain. And so I always say, what pains you? And what pains you means what hurts you enough that you want to do something about it. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be your own personal pain. That's why they have the commercials of, save the children, or feed the children, or save the animals and things like that when they're asking for money, because that's a pain point that they want to do something about. So you may not be starving, you may not have any, animals that, need to be saved, but because that's something that, you connected with and you want to do something about, that pain point pushes you into action. And so even with the podcast, how the podcast got started, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned before, that I'm a fatherless daughter advocate, which is actually how the Girl Dad Discussions podcast kind of came about, from this podcast. But before I ever started, I was on YouTube, not YouTube. I was on Instagram, and I had a page called Friends to Fatherless Daughters, which I still have. And I was just talking about, fatherless daughters from a father's point of view, from a man's point of view, and giving my opinion on the effects of fatherlessness, on daughters. And I was asked to be on podcasts. Several people called me to ask me to be on the podcast. And I said, well, okay, sure. I'd never been on podcast, didn't know anything about a podcast. Fast forward, I met one of the hosts in person, because we did the podcast, we were virtual, but I met one of the hosts in person, and we had a conversation, and he was like, you should have a podcast. And so I'm like, okay, I'll think about it. And fast forward, here we are. And so just going in that same progression of the quote that God gave me, pain births purpose. So it was out of the pain of, seeing my connection with fatherless daughters that made me start speaking on fatherless daughters. So that was the pain. Then the progress, the purpose came from that, which I started the Friends to Fatherless Daughters, and then I started being asked to be on podcasts, and then the evidence was the progress that was being made, from talking about it to starting my own podcast to recently just celebrating 100 episodes myself of the podcast, and then even to start the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. So that's the evidence that, I'm on the right track, or a person is on the right track, because you see how things start moving, and that lets you know that God is with you. And so even in your own journey, as you were saying, how it was through your transition and the things that you were doing that now you have the evidence of the book, being a best-selling author, you know what I'm saying? And then now the program, and you can see how things, line up, and I try to get young people to even to see that too, and going back to what we said, earlier about having a plan for your life. You know what I mean? And just with everything that you want to do, you got to have a plan, because if you don't have a plan, they say, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. You
That's so
know,
good.
and so even to go back to one of the things you said also, with that fear of missing out, and I think that's a big thing with our young people, and just in being able to sit down and make your own decisions. Don't follow the crowd, but sit down and say, okay, what is my decision? What is my choices? And so even with yourself, and I'm sure that comes up, when you talking to some of the young people
Mhm.
about the decisions that they may have made and may need to make. What is something that you kind of even teach them, even in that sense, about just how to make a good decision and not follow the crowd?
Absolutely. Yeah. So some of the things that I talk to them about is I say, in a world where every person, every place, everything is seemingly compromised, I want you to remain uncompromised and to walk in your authenticity. Number one, because there's no reason to follow anyone else, because you're one of one. You are the only person that's like you. You are the only original prototype that there will ever be. And who wants to spend their life being someone else when they can spend their life being themselves? Because at the end of the day, the most rewarding person, the most blessed person that you can be is you. And I always tell them, when it comes to walking in your authenticity, God can't bless who I pretend to be. So I'm
Mm.
coming it to the end of me, and I must walk in my authenticity. And so the number one thing that I tell young people is, when you want to follow trends, when you want to fall peer to societal pressures, you have to remember that you're faking the funk. You're faking it until you make it, but you don't realize you won't make it, because God can't bless who you pretend to be, but He does bless your authenticity. And so I'd encourage everyone to walk in who they are and whose they are in Him.
All right, all right, all right, man. And so you know what, and that's so amazing, because I think that when we talk about not being yourself, and we talk about not having that plan, and I always go back to the plan, because that's a big thing for me, because it was one of the things that helped me to become the person that I am today, because I had a plan, and I was able to sit down and say, okay, this is where I want to go, and put that plan together. And even as young as I was, I don't even know how I had that mindset, but I think I was just blessed with it, you know, that okay, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew the direction that I wanted to go. And so I was able to sit down and start figuring that out. But I think that a lot of our young people, because of that fear of missing out, of that following the crowd, that we kind of lose, or they kind of lose that authenticity of themselves in the midst of it, because they're trying to be everything that someone else says they should be, and I think that that's why I'm definitely big in personal development. And I've taken the disc assessment, and I'm going to get certified, and I haven't got certified in it yet, but that's one of the things that I definitely want to bring to young people, that okay, find out who you really are as a person, find out what you like, find out your desires, find out what makes you click, and so that you can show up in these spaces as yourself, and be able to be the leader that you can be, the leader that God created you to be, because we all were created with the purpose, on purpose, and for a purpose, and so we all have to be able to stand up and stand in that gap that we only us can feel, and I always say, there God has a purpose for each and every one of us, but only you can do what He has for you to do. Somebody may do it like you, somebody may do it, if you don't do it, He's going to get it done, but it's only one you that can do it what you've been called to do. And if you refuse to do it, then someone else will get it done, because his will always get done. But I think that we as people in general, then especially as our young people, we just really have to be able to get in touch with ourselves and follow that make solid decisions and be able to follow those through to become the person that we are to become. So, Miss Natasha, first of all, let me say thank you for being on. This time definitely went quick, but I want to say thank you for being on. I want you to leave us with something. I want you to have the last word. And I want you to leave us with something, however you see fit, a word of advice, a word of encouragement, however you feel, and definitely leave us with the information. Definitely your social media handles and things like that, and where we can follow you. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to kind of think about that. To my listeners, first of all, thank you guys for still hanging in here with me on the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Make sure that you guys are checking out our websites. The dealhealfulfill.org is our main website. Again, that's dealhealfulfill.org. And there you can find everything about me and what I have going on. Our workshops. You can find out about our to hire me to come in as a speaker. And again, I said the workshop and the podcast, both podcasts. You can find information about that, as well as the ebooks and the Deal to Heal tees, which is our inspirational t-shirt line. Also, make sure you go to ebooks by E. James. That's ebooks by E. James to get to check out the ebooks that we have available. We have the four core, since we were talking about fatherless daughters, we have the four core, which is the four values that every daughter should receive from her father. We also have Males to Men, which is a young mentoring book for young men coming into adulthood. And we have some other books there also. So make sure you go and check that out. That's ebooks by ejames.com. Also, I've been blessed to be a part of a organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And one of the things that we do, we have free virtual workshops every quarter of the year. And we talk about forgiveness, what it is, what it's not, forgiveness of others, forgiveness of ourselves, even forgiveness of the world. And we're study growing each one. So whenever you're listening to this podcast, either a workshop just ended or there's one that's coming up. So we have them every quarter of the year, and they are completely free. But I think that is definitely something that's much needed, a conversation that everyone should take part in. So make sure that you guys check us out. Again, that's forgivenessmission.com. And we have free virtual workshops every quarter of the year. We talk about forgiveness. Or you can just go to Eventbrite and register for the forgiveness workshop. Last but not least, I told you guys that I would tell you how you can win $100 from the podcast. You can win $100 from the podcast by joining our super subscriber contest. What does that mean? That means you must subscribe to our YouTube channel, to our Facebook page, and to our podcast on Spotify. After you've done those three things, you text the word WIN, WIN, to the number 866-326-0730 to qualify to win $100. The contest is ongoing and is random. So once you're in, you can always win. You don't have to re-up and nothing like that. Once you win, once you text, you definitely got to do the text. The text is the most important part. After you've done it, text the word WIN, WIN, to the number 866-326-0730 to qualify to win that $100. Again, Mr. Tasha, let me say thank you very much once again for being on. I definitely appreciate you and wish you much success on your journey. And I'm sure we'll cross paths again, especially in this in the next level of speakers in this speaking journey. I'm sure we'll cross paths again or in church. Either way. I'm sure we'll cross paths. So again, I appreciate you for being on, and I want you to have the last word. So the floor is yours.
Absolutely. And I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for allowing me to be on your podcast and to share my message. And I greatly appreciate you. I give you your flowers while you are yet alive. You are doing amazing things. And may God continue to blow your mind according to Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20. So I just wanted to start there.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I receive
Absolutely.
it.
Listen, go ahead, receive and believe. Amen. And so the thing that I wanted to leave the audience with is to remember to walk in purpose. Even as you talk about fulfilling your purpose, that word purpose, when you look it up in the etymology, it means an object to be kept in view. And so as you walk in your purpose, for those who are listening, the first thing that you must do is it is an object that God is going to put in front of your path. It's something that he's going to shine a light on. It's something that's going to be personal and relatable to you. As I tell everybody, contrary to popular belief, your purpose is not to get married. While that will be a part of your assignment, it may be a marriage is a ministry. That is not your purpose. God did not purpose you to get married. He didn't purpose you to have kids. God's purpose is personal and relatable to your life. It's going to be something or the thing that bothers you the most about what society, the thing that bothers you the most is the thing that you are called to change. So don't nudge it. Don't try to shake it off. Don't try to just pass it off as just, it's just something that's just dealing with me. No, God is dealing with you about something that he wants you to deal with, and he's going to do it through you. But please let it be through you and not somebody else, because as E said earlier, if God don't use you, he'll use another person. But I pray you have the demeanor and the disposition of the prophet Isaiah in the Bible. He said, "Here I am, Lord, send me, I will go." And so my prayer is that you make a decision today to walk in the purpose that God has for you. And I want you to know that it's his purpose. According to Romans chapter 8, verse 28, "For we know that all things work together for the good of those that love God and are called according to his purpose." The Bible is very specific. It's not what your mother thinks your purpose is, what your father thinks your purpose is, your friends, your family. "Oh, you're really good at this. You should do this." Doesn't matter how good or how great they think you are. What matters is what God says, because although it can be good, doesn't mean that it's God. And so I want you to walk according to God's purpose for your life. And you will do that once you know who you are and whose you are. So please don't suffer from identity theft and identity crisis, but begin to shore yourself up in the word. And just in case no one's told you lately, I love you. God loves you. You are the apple of his eye. You are amazing. You're talented. You're fabulous. You are brilliant. You were placed here on earth for such a time as this. You are redeemed. You're loved. You're accepted. You're forgiven. And you have been adopted into sonship. And I want you to know who you are and whose you are. And lastly, according to 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9, you are a part of a holy and royal priesthood, a chosen generation, a holy nation. You are one of God's own special people, and you are his unique and peculiar treasure. And it's okay to be unique. It's okay to be peculiar, because you are treasured by God. And to be known by God is to be loved by God. And so I'd rather be known by him than known by man all the days of my life. For the Bible says, "Paul I know, Silas I know, but who are you?" And I want you to be known by God, and I want you to know who you are and whose you are in him, so that you never suffer from identity theft, you never suffer identity crisis, but you always walk in purpose. And that's what I want to leave you with. And how you can connect with me is on social media. On Twitter and Instagram, you can find me at 3G Connection. That's the name of my book. It all runs together in one word, 3G Connection _. That's Twitter and Instagram. On YouTube, you can subscribe to my channel. It's my first and last name, Natasha Jugger TV. So you can subscribe, like, comment to my channel. And then also please connect with me on LinkedIn at Natasha Jugger, Facebook, Natasha Jugger, and my business page is 3G Connection LLC. So really, you can find me anywhere by typing in 3G Connection, or you can type in Natasha Jugger and you'll find me on those platforms. So go to God, grow with grace, and glow in glory. Thank you so much.
Amen. We can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help people to deal to heal and to fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.